All right, hi. So my name is Mark Cho. I'm here with my good friend Bobby McCauley, running for County Supervisor, 5th District, Eastern Madera County. How you doing, Bobby?
Pretty good, Mark. Thanks for having me this morning. Always nice to be here at Bass Lake and at the Pines Resort. So thanks again for having me.
My pleasure. So we're here today just to kind of get to know you a little bit better, and kind of why you're running for office, and uh, what opportunities and threats you see, and uh, why people should vote for you. Um, so I guess to start off with, why don't we kind of talk a little bit about our history?
Sure.
Because when I first moved to the area, you're one of the first people I met, and we went hiking.
Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah, no, that was great. Yeah, I think you moved here just a couple of years after I moved back. And so I moved back to the area after graduating from Yosemite Unified and going to college, got a couple degrees in economics and business administration. Ended up moving back in 2013. My dad actually got sick, and so they needed some help around the office. And so I decided it'd be a good opportunity for me to come home, reacquaint myself with the community, and help out with the family business. And so, like I said, I think that was 2013, and I can remember working with your mom specifically, and she would always talk so fondly of you, and she'd say, "Oh, how great it is that you're working with your folks, and I can't wait for Mark, to move up from LA and start working with us." And
Mm.
so it was always great working with your mom, your
Yeah, because
dad
it's,
as
it's
well.
been it's probably been I know well over 12 years now, right?
Well, I've been back for about 9 years.
Oh no, I mean yeah, but I mean
What?
with originally with Doug and Susan, probably, right?
Oh gosh, no. My parents have been clients, or excuse me, brokers for the Pines Resort back, all the way since Rudy owned the
Okay,
place.
so I
And
didn't know
so,
that. It's going on 12 years for us. So
yeah, no. So my folks moved up here in the early '80s, I think like 1980, and my dad opened up the office in Oakhurst, I think in '86. I'm not sure when they started working here at the Pines, but I believe it was in like the early '90s. So if you know Steve Welch over at Bass Lake
hmm
Water, when he used to run the Pines, that's I think when my parents started working with the Pines. So it's been a long time, probably closer to 30 years.
wow. What as long as my parents, as long as my family has taken over the Pines Resort, basically Doug and Susan been helping out, and as long as I've been here, that's basically when I met you. So,
Yeah.
and I appreciate their service, and I appreciate that you working with that. You know about small business, because I think small business is so important to a community like this.
And that's the kind of you know business that I want to bring to the county, right? It's not about going and doing a job. It's going out and working with the community and really providing a service to them. So, I think county staff really needs to understand that they're there to work for residents in Madera County. And so, when we lose sight of that, that's when things start to fall between the cracks, and that's when we stop pushing, important action items forward. So, we want to take a customer service approach to county operations, especially when we're talking about working, with residents in the area. And we have a lot of forward-facing departments at the county. Not all of them, right? We have our human resources department, and it's their job, to treat the staff at the county like they're their customers, right? And so when we take that customer first attitude, I think that's when we're going to be a little bit more successful at the county. So that's really one thing that I've been pressing upon county staff over the last 3 years. Excited to make some more changes in the coming years, so we can really hammer that home.
So, how long have you been with working at as chief of staff for Tom Wheeler now?
So I got hired on, I think October 1st was my official start date of 2019. So just over or just under 3 years now. Started on a part-time or interim basis in August. So kind of that 3-year mark. But yeah, it's been an amazing experience. I've had such a great opportunity to learn about county operations, as well as how important it is for the county to work with the community and work with our partners in the area, organizations like Forest Service or Yosemite Sequoia RC&DC, who's doing a lot of the great fuel reduction work around the lake right now. I think they're doing 100-foot fuel breaks in the county right of way on 274, 223, 426, and on Thornbury Mountain. So great project, and understanding how those relationships work is really how we make the best use of our tax dollars.
Okay, so let's go into that a little bit. So,
Sure.
I guess, how did you end up becoming a chief of staff? Like, what prompted that?
So, it's kind of one of those things. Actually, it was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. I was talking to Randy Papike, with Papike Construction. He's been around forever. Known his kids, went to school with them, but he was giving me a hard time at Rotary. We're in Rotary together, and I was currently president of the Boys and Girls Club. I was involved with the Oakhurst Community Center, the sewer district in Oakhurst, as well as a couple other things. I think it was right when I was doing the honorary mayor contest. And he says, Bobby, you better be careful, because if you keep saying yes, before you know it, you're going to be supervisor. And I never really thought that was like something that would ever be a possibility for me. Getting out there and being kind of, vocal has never really been, my thing. So I never thought politics was ever something I would ever get into. But hard work, I think, is something that has always been my the way I do things, right? I can remember as a little kid, people saying, "Hey, you're a hard worker," and wanting to put me in different positions where I can continue to grow. And so I think Supervisor Wheeler saw that as well. And so when he was looking for a new chief of staff, he wanted to ensure that there was somebody in that position that knew the community, that understood the needs of the community, was able to work with stakeholders in the area and ensure that we're moving projects forward, developing new ideas that are going to make a difference, 2-3 years down the line. And so I'm excited that he tapped my shoulder and asked me to apply for the position because, like I said before, I mean, it's just been such a tremendous opportunity for me.
Yeah, and I'm sure that he's really shown you the ropes on what it takes to, I guess, get things done. And I think I don't know, but I assume that it's not easy because there's a lot of people to satisfy, a lot of things. It seems like there's a lot to do if to actually make progress. Just because it's government and there's a lot of regulations and things of that nature. I guess what is your biggest few things or thing that you've learned that it was a surprise to you? You didn't realize that this is what was all involved in this position.
I always say government works too slow to wait, so we got to act now. And I never really, I think, understood how slow government works until I actually started working with the county, understanding how bureaucratic the state is, really some of the problems with big government, right? And so for me at the county, what I've the biggest thing that I've learned is that the more we can divest ourselves of not necessarily responsibility, but the actual work that's being done, the better off we're going to be. And what I mean by that is if we can partner with our local stakeholders to do a job that the county is doing, they're likely going to do that job better, right? I mean, I think everybody intuitively knows this, that private enterprise has that ability to work quicker, work more flexible, so that way we can really meet the needs of the community. So that's one thing. But beyond that, supervisor has taught me a lot, but he's also taught me a lot of what not to do. Right? Tom is a pretty dynamic individual, tends to be a little stubborn sometimes, and so telling Tom what to do doesn't always work. But you learn, right? And for me, I've always learned by watching and listening what people are doing. And so that's a good way to learn, what not to do as well as what to do.
Yeah, and I think knowing Tom pretty well too, it seems like uh, he can be tough, but he always wants your opinion.
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Tom's not a micromanager. You know what I mean? So he's really given me the freedom over the last 3 years to really take things on myself. So I always report back to Tom, make sure that we're working, through the office and not breaking any rules or breaking any laws or anything like that, right? But Tom has been an amazing boss because he just lets me go out, and I think I've earned his trust by putting forth some real positive results, some real big wins for the county.
Do you mind kind of going into that a little bit? Like, so what are some of the few highlights as far as the wins that have happened while you've been working with Tom?
Well, it's been a tough time, right? Over the last 3 years. I mean, people may not know, but Madera County's actually had, I think, like 6 or 7 local disaster declarations over the last 3 years. From Creek Fire to, the River Fire to the wind event back in 2020. Obviously, COVID, drought. All these things. While they are terrible, right? Because it puts a huge burden on county and as well as residents in the area, they also create opportunities to learn, opportunities for change. So a great example, back in 2020 when COVID hit, and everybody's panicking, nobody really knows what to do. We had actually just lost our CAO in 2019, December of 2019. He retired under a little scrutiny, but we had no chief administrative officer in 2020 when the pandemic broke out. And so we had just actually finished up a department head meeting where our interim department head was kind of getting walked on by some of the department heads. And so it was not a pretty picture. And so was actually having lunch with one of my colleagues, the then chief of staff, Letty Gonzalez, now Supervisor Gonzalez. She oversees one of the districts down in the city. And we were, trying to figure out what the heck we're going to do, because, the original plan was to go out, collect applications, do some interviews, and hire, a CAO 6 to 7 months down the line, because the process is so slow, right?
We didn't have that time.
Don't have that time. We had to figure out something to do. So Letty and I talked, and what we ended up settling on was Jay Varney. So, I mean, if I could highlight one thing that I helped accomplish at the county, it was bringing Jay Varney in to be our CAO. So we had that discussion. We both went and talked to our respective bosses. It was Max Rodriguez for her at the time. And, within a month, Jay was our new CAO. He was able to bring public health and the sheriff's office together to do, some real thorough contact tracing, which was very important early on in the pandemic. And really, we actually were able to develop a model that was replicated in, LA County and throughout the state. So we were recognized for those efforts as a county and the innovative approach that we took to it.
And going back to the past few years, it's been really challenging as a business owner, especially in hospitality and restaurants. And so I think you being at the office, being able to reach out to, call, let me know what's going on, what resources are out there, who I might need to call. When the Creek Fire, it shut us down for a month.
Right.
You helped us coordinate with the sheriff so we can get in, take the food. We donated it to the Manor House rather than let it go bad.
Right.
Get things prepared so that once things were safe and ready to open, that we're prepared to hit the ground running as far as opening our business, because we lost so much business being shut down for a month.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And it's all about information, right? And, when we, as business owners or residents, have the information we need to make good decisions, that's when we see good government in action, right? And so, the county's not perfect. I've talked a lot about this over the last 2 years. We need to do a better job communicating to the public, not just the information they need to make good decisions, but helping them be aware of what the county has done, what they're doing, because a lot of people don't know, they don't understand all the work that goes into a project like the one I mentioned before around 274, or perhaps the creation of the fire station out in North Fork, right? All the work that went into that, partnering with the North Fork Rancheria to get that done. And so, one of the things that I was actually able to do, it's been just about a year now. So, I was a board member for an organization called the Eastern Madera County Foundation, and I did fall off the board after a couple of years because it just got too busy. But the group was looking to dissolve, and we had another organization, the Chamber Alliance, that was looking to find a 501c3. They were going to form a 501c3 so they could operate under that. And so I said, hey, you know what, why don't we just merge these two organizations together, and we can meet the need that everybody's talking about. We can re-energize the foundation, we can have the alliance be part of it. And so what we have now with the foundation is an organization that is got representatives from each area chamber, so Coarse Gold, North Fork, Bass Lake, and Oakhurst. And then we've got the Visitors Bureau on there, and we've got 6 community representatives from out the mountain communities of Madera County. And so when you put them together, we have an opportunity to really channel information through this organization so it can then be disseminated out into the community. It's not perfect, but they're doing a really good job. We've got them involved with our behavioral health board, Measure T, along with a number of other things like our YARPs and things that are important to the community that really help us operate a little bit more smoothly. We were also able to bring on a community grant writer, which has been an amazing experience. I think we've submitted 5 grants over the last 6 months, totaling, I think, like $8.5 million, everything from trail grants to facility improvement grants to road improvement grants. So, we need to go out and do a better job of capturing state and federal dollars because those are our tax dollars. And so we need to make sure that those dollars come back to the community so that way they can benefit the residents in the area, right?
And that's what they're made for, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't do the work, then you're not taking advantage of these incentives that are meant to improve, the community and things of that nature.
Yeah, and there's a lot of grants that the county can't apply for, right? And the county's not going to apply for a grant to improve the Fresno Flats Historical Society because they're a private nonprofit, right? And so providing those organizations with the resources to get that done, like I said before, when we can work through private enterprise and get those things done, that's when we're really going to be successful.
And so, talking about that, can you give us an example besides this one where you've seen it work very successfully, where government and private enterprise really was very constructive in improving the community?
Yeah, actually, we've got this great organization in town. They've been working in the community, I want to say, for about 7 or 8 months. Previously had done some work up in Mariposa, where they're very well known for the work they're doing over there. The organization's called Native Solutions, right? And you can just tell by their name, right, where their focus is. Mm-hmm. It's with the Native population. So they don't just service those folks; they also service the community at large. But they do specialize, and they are run by a woman. She's I believe she's Picayune and Miwok descendant, right? And so she kind of has a better understanding of the needs of the Native population. And so we've been able to, redirect some county resources to help support her organization so that way she can fulfill her mission. And really what she's looking to do is, do site visitation, or excuse me, not site visitation, child visitation. So she does the supervised visits. She's working with the homeless community up here. Really doing a lot of great work. She's implemented a DUI program, like an in-person one, where she can actually work with the folks hand in hand to make sure that they're not just, checking a box, that they're actually learning, why it's important that they're out there, driving responsibly and driving safely. So Native Solutions is another great example. We're continuing to try to expand upon what she's doing in the area. She'd like to open up a wellness center in the Oakhurst area proper, so that way folks that do need access to internet or maybe need to take a shower or something like that, they can come down to her facility and seek services. And she's well in tune with county staff, And so when there's a referral that needs to be made out to behavioral health or Department of Social Services, she can help facilitate that. So it's extra arms, in the community, without creating an additional burden to the county, and we can keep county operations small, which I think is important because one of the things that Madera County does better than a lot of other counties is that we're real flexible. And we're able to do that because we are a smaller county, kind of one of those mid-sized counties. So if you talk to people over in Fresno that do business in both Fresno and Madera,
There's a lot more bureaucracy.
there's a lot more bureaucracy. Exactly right. You got to deal with the city, you got to deal with the county, and it's just a lot, right? And so when we can streamline the process for, private enterprise organizations like yourself, help ensure that they get the information to make good business decisions. Again, that's good county work. That's good government.
Okay. So I'm going to change gears a little bit now and kind of go back to our history. And I remember when I first met you, both you and Doug took me to one of the most epic hikes,
Yep.
Clouds Rest.
Yep.
I still remember that very clearly. It's I was scared for my life. Right when you get onto that ridge.
It's a little daunting.
Yeah, it's like on each side of you is just like a very far fall.
Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely.
it was awesome. And then also at the Boys and Girls Club, you invited me to teach kickboxing.
Yep.
And that's one thing I really admired, that you spent your time working with these kids, and the community really, I think it's such a blessing for the community to have the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated the work you do there, because it's not easy with the amount of kids doing all sorts of things all over the place.
Man, there's so much that goes into that club, and we're so lucky to be where we are and have our unit director, Jennifer Simmons, there. So Grandpa actually helped start the Boys and Girls Club back in 1999.
Well, so that's very near and dear to your heart.
It is, yeah. And so we're coming up on our 25th anniversary here. So we're excited for that. But, I personally have been involved since 2013. Jen came on in 2014. And when she came on, we had a discussion early on, which was, we want to be open to those kids that are most in need, first and foremost. And we never want to turn away a kid because of their inability to pay, or a parent's unwillingness to pay, if that's the case, right? And so we've done a lot of work to raise money in the community, and the Boys and Girls Club has been, up until this past summer, 100% community funded, which is just an amazing accomplishment that we were able to keep something like that going for so long. And, we service, close to 300 kids a year through our after-school care, as well as our youth sports programs that we run.
And you see some of them now are not little kids. They're like big kids,
Yeah.
or even young adults.
So it's pretty cool. The kids that graduated last year were in third grade when I started. So, one young man in particular, Sebastian, he really kind of, for me, he just encapsulates everything. That's why I love the club. He's been there, a regular member, forever. Graduated from YHS with a 4.6, and now he's going to college. He's top of his class, right? He's just a classy guy, and he didn't stop going to the club when he got into high school. What he did is he decided, he wanted to give back to the club. A lot of kids, by the time they get to that age, they're off doing their own thing. But Sebastian, decided that he wanted to be a good mentor to the kids, the younger kids, right? So he can ensure that the next generation of youth gets all the advantages that he did through the club. And so, he does coaching, he does reffing, he's helping run programs. We're sad to see him go, but so excited for his future, because I know he's going to accomplish some great things.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of that, like, so you have a lot of roots in this community.
Yeah.
Do you mind kind of explaining, like, how long have you been here? How, like, as far as, like, what is your, what do you feel is your, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, what does this community mean to you?
Shoot, man. So I grew up actually in Oakhurst. I was born down at Clovis, and my parents lived up here at the time, so spent my entire life up here. Was raised over on Bonneview up until I was about 13, and then my folks moved over to 425A, just above Subway there, when I was just before I got to high school. So this is my home. It's really that simple. I know the people here, so when something goes wrong, it's not a pothole in the road. It's a pothole on my friend's road. If Department of Social Services isn't providing adequate services to the community, it's not just a constituent. It's probably somebody I've known for the last 30 years, right? And so when I get phone calls from folks, looking for help, you better believe I'm going to be there for them. And that's part of it, right? But I think more than anything, I've been put in a position to, be a responsible leader, an honest leader. And I think, with great privilege comes great responsibility. I think we all know that, right? Mm-hmm. And so I take, this opportunity very seriously. I understand, that we are in a very turbulent time, especially politically, right?
Absolutely.
And I think we've seen that a lot in this election, that, there are a lot of people out there that are just very angry.
Yeah, and I think it's politically and economically. I think it's just turbulent in many ways.
It's charged, right?
It's charged, and it's very uncertain. I think that it makes people feel a little bit uneasy when the future's not so certain.
Yeah, and it's the harder things get, the less good people want to be involved, which is the sad part. It's this downward spiral. And so for me, when I was presented with this opportunity to run, I felt like I was obligated to an extent, right? Not that I'm not happy and excited to be in this position, but it wasn't really a choice for me. My dad actually had an opportunity to run after Harry Baker was supervisor, and he was about my age at that time, and he decided not to because he had my brother and myself, and so he decided he was going to stick to business and family. But when the opportunity came to me, it wasn't a question. It was my time to serve, and so I have really enjoyed doing that at the chief of staff level, and I'm just so optimistic for what we can accomplish over the next 4 years as supervisor.
Okay, so having grown up in the area over many years, and your family having a lot of roots in the area, you've seen a lot of changes, I'm sure, from where it was from your earliest memory till now.
Yeah.
And so with this growth, growth is never guaranteed. But what opportunities do you see for this county? Like, what are you excited about?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can remember, before the Vaughn Shopping Center was the Vaughn Shopping Center, right? Before there was a stoplight on 49. And I know there's a lot of people up here that, remember when 426, 41 was a four-way stop. But definitely seen, the community grow up a little bit over the last couple of years. And it's been an interesting experience. Not all growth is good. So you need to be really conscious and thoughtful about, where your growth is taking place, right? And you need to make sure that your developers are putting forth, responsible projects. And so that's one thing that I really want to focus on moving forward. Back in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, there's a lot of development that wasn't necessarily well thought out. Like, you look at John West Road, right? And it extends back like, I don't know how many miles. I think it feels like a 4.5 mile road if you go all the way back to the end. And you just wonder, how did somebody allow that to happen? Because it's really a public safety hazard, right? And so would love to see some growth, addressing issues like that, where we have, dead end roads that are really, a public safety issue, right? And so focusing on that is certainly going to be a priority. But, when we look at the county as a whole, or we look at specifically District 5, we need to do a better job of utilizing what's available to us, right? And so here in District 5, one of the biggest issues we have is the forest, right? Land management. And so when I think about opportunities for the area, it's finding a way to tackle that and get us back to where we were in the 80s. When I was born, right, where we were able to, create a product out of the forest and use that as an economic driver to maintain the land, right? And so we've lost that since the 90s, but we need to be more creative in bringing in this industry that can, create a benefit out of all the woody biomass that's available, right? And so we've got the biomass facility, out in North Fork, which is a great step. That thing is inching along, and I think it's going to go online sometime in the next year or so.
And I'm just kind of curious
Sure.
with the biomass, because I always wonder this too. Is like there's so many trees, like
Right.
both on the ground and still living, and some areas that are way too dense. We know that. What becomes of the biomass? Like how does a dead tree become a valuable product and a resource for the community?
Sure. Well, I mean, that depends on what you're trying to do, right? So in the instance of the biomass facility, we send the byproduct through a chipper, and we get it down to a specific size, and then they're able to process that and turn it into electricity.
Oh, wow.
And then really, actually it doesn't stop there. You have biochar after you've done that, and that biochar can be used, to help with agriculture and those sorts of things. So we're seeing a lot of growth in those sectors over the last couple of years. And so I think the biomass facility is well positioned to be a real benefit to the community. That project started, I want to say it was like 2012, 2013. My girlfriend, actually, Britta Dyer, actually wrote the grant to help get that project funded and, or get it started, get it off the ground, right? I think it's had a number of shortfalls over the last couple of years where they've had to go out and secure some additional funding from investors, right? It is a private project. It's not a county project. But creating more things like that. I've heard. Yeah, go ahead.
So I mean, and speaking about the forest, I think that there's a lot of people who share the same concern that I do, of wildfires and insurance due to wildfires,
Right.
and how that affects business. And so I guess I'll kind of leave this open-ended. Like, what are the things that you've heard keep people up at night? What are the real dangers that you think are concerning the people of this community? And what are some solutions for that?
Yeah, I mean, wildfire is always going to be on the top of that list for me. When I look at what's going on around the state, even just north of us in Mariposa County with the Oak Fire, it scares the hell out of me, to be honest with you. Had the opportunity to actually meet a supervisor up in, I think it's Butte County, and he lived in the town of Greenville. And I say lived because that town was lost in the Dixie Fire. And so, when I spoke with him, it was post fire, right? And just looking into his eyes and really seeing the pain and the suffering that he himself endured as a business owner, as a supervisor, as a resident of that community. I think I understand that could be us, if we're not able to act responsibly and make some real change over the next couple of years. As everybody always says, right, it's not if wildfire comes, it's when wildfire comes. And so we have to be prepared. We have to ensure that our fire personnel have the proper equipment and the proper staffing in order to suppress fire when it comes. And part of doing that is ensuring that our lands are well managed. And so I go back to the project that we talked about before that's going around Bass Lake, right, on the roadsides in the county right away. A lot of fires start from folks from out of the area. So when they're, whether it's they're driving through and there's a chain that drags and sparks, or a trailer or a cigarette butt, whatever that may be. A lot of times it also happens on the roadside. That's why we do, the control burn on 41 below 200 every year, is because, we know that if we can help prevent force or fires on the roadside, we're going to have a better chance of keeping the community safe. And so we got to do more projects like that. We got to put in some strategic fuel breaks. There's been a lot of analysis over the last couple of years of where we need to put in these fuel breaks, and we're working on it right now. Actually, the county staff, our county fire department, is putting in some fuel breaks on Thornberry that'll tie all the way over to Mariposa, in some fuel breaks that they're doing over there. And so working through our county fire, working with the MMU, the Madera, Mariposa, Merced unit for CAL FIRE, partnering up with Forest Service and Yosemite Sequoia, our RCDCs, all these organizations, coming together to meet the need of today is what has to happen. And I'm thankful we're at a time in history where the tide does seem to be turning, right? We went through a period where we were able to use logging as a means of maintaining the land. And logging went away, obviously, about 30 years ago, in large part. And since then, we've just been, fighting this losing battle of trying to manage our lands, because there's no economic driver. But what we're seeing is our land managers, like the folks at Forest Service, are making some real changes to allow for more logging, more grazing, and really practices that will help keep communities like North Fork and Oakhurst, Ahwahnee, Coarsegold, help keep those places safe. They actually just released a document for review, I think, and it's supposed to be finalized here in the next couple of months. It's their land management plan, and within that plan for the Sierra National Forest, again, they're going to allow for more logging, more timber harvest, more grazing, and those sorts of things. So excited to see that. Also excited to see some investments, real investments being made by the state and the federal government, through grants, right? And so I go back to, working with our partners like Yosemite Sequoia, who's doing the project here, like Coarsegold Resource Conservation District, who runs our Firewise Madera program. They were actually just awarded, $1.3 million to help do work on private lands. And the way they were able to do that is by writing grants, right? And they have the staff capacity, because we as a county were able to make investments in that organization and help them hire on staff that was able to get the job done. So,
And that's great news. I think that it kind of goes to the common sense, that you're talking about, because it makes sense. It would be a win-win. It's you're bringing industry, you're bringing jobs,
Exactly.
and you're securing people's homes and livelihoods and businesses. So your slogan is transparency, common sense, and innovation.
Yep.
Can you unpack that a little bit? What does that mean for the community? What does that mean for me as a citizen of Oakhurst?
Gosh, if I can be honest, I wish my slogan had been hard work, honesty, and integrity. But once you push print, I think you're stuck with what you got. And not to say that those words don't mean anything to me, but they really do. The ones I mentioned, I think this campaign has really taken a turn where I never would have seen it going. But that's kind of another conversation. So we'll get back to the common sense, innovation, and transparency. Those are things that I really want to bring to the county, right? And so, I think everybody knows that when you're talking government, common sense is almost an oxymoron, because, you go back to that thing about big government, right? And it's the bigger something gets, the less they're able to apply common sense, right? And so for me, I want to bring common sense back to Madera County by partnering with our local businesses, partnering with our nonprofits that are able to work a little bit more flexibly and a little bit more nimbly than the county maybe, or the state, and certainly more than the feds, right? I mean, here's a great example of a lack of common sense, right? So we've got a bridge up in the Sierra. It's been out for about 2 years. It's the Upper Chiquita Bridge. And so Forest Service, local personnel, they're just about as frustrated as we are. And the problem lies that, they have to work through a contracting office in Washington, D.C. So you've got local land managers having to, farm this out to DC, so DC can then communicate with people here on the ground level doing the project. For me, that's ridiculous, right? Common sense says that we need someone managing that project locally to ensure it gets done quickly and it gets done right. When we don't do that, this is what we're left with. This is a 2.5-year construction project, and we still don't have a date on which it's going to be completed. And so, that's common sense, right? Is we need to have people at the ground level, working on these projects. And when we talk about innovation, I think we develop innovation, again, through private industry. Those are our innovators. Capitalism drives innovation, right? And so the more we can work through those organizations, the more we're going to bring innovation to Madera County. And then transparency, that's on us. That's on us as a county. And it kind of goes back to, what I was talking about earlier with communication. The county needs to do a better job of communicating, to the public, not only just helping them understand what we're doing, but giving them ample time to make good decisions, right? And so a good example, fresh example, is the self-help project that was being brought to Oakhurst, right? And so, I helped get that project started about a year or so ago by making actually a cold call to self-help, letting them know that, hey, we need more housing up in Madera County. Can you help us? And
I'll say just on that point, trying to, and I think I'm speaking for all business owners in Madera County, definitely in Eastern Madera County. If you have a restaurant or a hotel, you are struggling to find employees. And one of the reasons you're struggling is because employees don't have places to live.
Right.
It's just for a variety of reasons. So I definitely think there is a need. I see it, I experience it, every day.
Right. Yeah. And I agree. I get those calls all the time. Ironically, I actually got a call from a elderly couple out in Norfolk the same day that the developer pulled their application, saying, "Hey, we appreciate all the help that you guys have given us over the last 6 months, trying to stay in our rental, but we've got to move on, and we're moving down to Fresno." And so that kind of stuff kind of breaks my heart. Oftentimes these calls are from people that I went to high school with. It's the younger generation, and the older, retired folks that are really getting squeezed out. Those folks that are business owners or well established, they're hurting, right? But at the same time, they're not the ones that are being forced out of the area. It's those folks that are, in their early 20s, even mid to late 20s, and again, those people on fixed income. So we gotta curb that. But going back to transparency, right? The county needs to do a better job of noticing people and helping them understand what's going on. I've been talking about this project for a long time. We actually put a little press release on it back in September of last year, when the county was able to help them secure funds to get the project done, state funds, right? I think it was like $1.6 million that the county was able to help them secure. But, when I get calls from residents in the area saying, "Hey, I just found out about it," pisses me off. Because, I was pretty clear with county staff, pretty clear with supervisor that we needed to be, very open with the public on this project, because I do understand that, projects like this can be controversial. Not everybody wants to see a 3-story building in Oakhurst. Not everybody understands, what permanent supportive housing is, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we can get in front of people and make sure they understand what these things are, why it's important, they're going to be less likely to send bad information around. And that's what happened with this project, really, is that county didn't get in front of it, get that information out first, and then all of a sudden rumors start spreading around, and it's like wildfire. Once it's going, it's hard to get a hold of.
So where are we at now with it?
The developer pulled their conditional use permit, their application, so the project's stalled out.
So as of right now, we don't have any additional affordable housing or, I guess places for like a young somebody young working, trying to get a place for themselves. There's nothing new.
There's
on
a
the
couple
road.
projects, aside
Okay.
from that are working. We're actually putting some sticks in the ground out in North Fork right now, a very small housing project. I want to say it's like 24 or 28 units or something like that. I want to say they're going to be going for around $300,000 to $400,000. So that's nice for folks that are established, but when we're talking about rentals and starter homes, certainly doesn't meet the need. We've got another developer that has approached the county. They want to do a project off 425B. Hopeful to see that come. They want to do some permanent rentals there, which would be a great project. Also, another one off 41, north side of Oakhurst. I think there's some housing that might go there, but none of those applications have actually hit the county's doorstep yet. So I'm excited to hear that there's some investors coming in to help us meet the housing need. But as for the self-help project right now, I think the project's kind
Back
of
to the
stalled
drawing
out,
board.
right? Yeah, I think they're going to have to go back and do the environmental review that the neighbors said they need to do, and it's unfortunate because the developer really did go above and beyond the minimum standards to make that project work in that area, taking additional setbacks from the riparian area on the Fresno River. They're hooked up to sewer and water, plenty of capacity with those. They're expanding. They planned on expanding Sierra Way to full build out, which allows for more parking. And they were going to make some improvements to 426 to ensure that intersection stays safe. So, I mean, all those are not required, right? They could very much do an environmental review, and that review could say, yeah, you guys don't have to do any of that. And that's likely going to be the case. But, the great thing, what I love about self-help enterprises is they're going to do that anyways, right? And so whether or not they're required to do that, they're going to do it anyways. Why? Because they're good partners in the community, and they understand that if they can put forth a quality product, they're going to be better received. They're going to be more successful down the line because that's their reputation, right? They've been doing this since 1963. They understand what it means to manage these projects. It's just like you as a business owner. The Pines is nothing without their reputation, right? You guys spend a lot of money on marketing to ensure that, people, not just in California, not just in the United States, but throughout the world know that Bass Lake is one of the number one places to travel to in California, and that if you're going to stay in Bass Lake, you should probably stay at the Pines because it's the nicest resort here, right? So it's about reputation, and it's about a track record of success, and I think that's what self-help brings to the table. So I hope that they do come back with the project. I think it's really needed. Having something like that for families and elderly that's right next to the schools, right next to medical care, right next to walking paths, it really is the ideal location.
Okay, and going back to what you were saying, you kind of were saying that it had you change, like the way the campaign has evolved. You said you might be hard work,
Honesty and
honesty,
integrity.
hard work, science. So I guess that kind of goes with transparency there. So
It does.
But what kind of makes you, what brings about that thought and the hard work aspect? Is that's the main, I think, difference there.
Those are my qualities, right? When I developed the slogan, it was what I wanted to bring to the county, right? What I wanted to see the county do. I want to see them work transparently. I want to see them create innovative solutions for the community. And I want to see, us use some common sense as a county, as a district, to ensure that we're not wasting taxpayer dollars. But, when I say that I wish I had gone with hard work, honesty, and integrity, I think it's because those are the qualities that I myself bring to the table. I consider myself to be a very hard worker. I've always used the term try hard, right? I'm not the most athletic. I'm not the most intelligent, but damn it, I try hard, and I'm there to do the job, and I'm not going to do it until it's done and it's done right. My dad always told me, if you're going to do something, do it right, and I hold true to that, right? I call them Dougisms actually, because my dad's got a lot of
Oh yeah,
sayings.
I remember a few.
Yeah.
He taught me a few Dougisms on that hike.
Yeah, we used to call that the Doug word actually. But My dad, he's just an amazing individual. I've learned so much from him since I was a young guy, and continue to learn. And just like any relationship, our relationship has evolved. To where I think I can say without any doubt, he's my best friend, and so I trust in him a lot. When I've got things that I'm not sure what to do, I look to him for advice. And I can say without a doubt that I wouldn't be where I am without him. He's a rock star. So.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And Doug, great buddy of mine too. So, uh, and just a few more questions before I wrap up. But one thing that kind of going back to, I'm going to switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
But going back to concerns of the people, because I think like we had mentioned earlier, that it's uncertain times, and definitely fire is a huge concern, because every year it's like it's almost like living next to a volcano. You're not sure where it's going to erupt or what's going to happen. But in addition to the actual fire threat itself, I know there's coworkers I have that it's becoming much less affordable because they didn't anticipate their house insurance just jumping up, not just by percentage but multiplying.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do on that end, or is that is that just something we have to live with?
No, I don't think so. But I mean, you're right, and it doesn't stop with homeowners insurance. The cost of insurance, even in commercial business, is a real threat to our way of life up here. And if it continues to escalate in the way it is, many of us will be priced out, not just residents but businesses. Talked to a property owner, has a commercial operation in town, and they were explaining to me that in 2019, the cost of their general liability insurance was $150, and then in 2020 it was $300. In 2021 it was $600, and now their most recent quote is $900,000 a year. And so, those are costs that are likely going to be, passed down to their tenants. They're either going to have to eat that money, or they're going to have to pass it down to their tenants. And so, that greatly increases the cost of doing businesses for our small businesses, right? And so it's not just a residential issue, it's also a commercial issue. And I always say with insurance, it has to be like a multi-pronged approach, right? There's no one thing that's going to get us out of this mess. We have to be real in understanding that, wildfire, like I said before, is coming, and we have to be prepared for it. And so managing insurance is really about managing risk, right? And that's what the insurance companies are looking at. They're looking at their risks of holding policies in a specific area. And so many of those organizations have pulled out. They no longer want to provide insurance in high risk areas like Bass Lake or North Fork or Oakhurst or Coarsegold. I'm even hearing, that down in the valley where there's really not any forest, they're even infected down there. And why? Because zip codes, right? Because insurance companies are using zip codes to determine whether or not they're going to provide services in an area. And so it's very problematic, and there does need to be some state, adjustments, right, to regulations, to risk modeling, these sorts of things. And the state is slowly making some changes. I think there's some changes that are going to be made January 1st that will force insurance companies to take a closer look at each individual home or business and provide them with what's called a risk score. And so that risk score will let you know that, hey, this is why your rate is what it is.
And so you're thinking that with forest management, land management, that we'll be able to show that certain steps are being taken to mitigate the risks should a fire occur.
Exactly. And that's kind of the whole approach that we've done with our Firewise Madera program. So back in, actually it was September of last year, the county was able to secure, I think, $350,000 in federal funding and send that over to one of our partners, Coarsegold Resource Conservation District, so they could develop this program. It's called Firewise Madera. And basically what they do is they go out and they work with communities on creating risk reduction plans, right? And so they'll go into the community, they'll help each homeowner evaluate their home. They bring CAL FIRE out to make recommendations on defensible spaces, help them understand where their risks are. But they also give them resources to help secure grants for themselves. But as I mentioned earlier, they've also secured grant funding themselves to help do work on private lands. And so they got a grant from CAL FIRE for $1.3 million, and they're going to be going into, I think, the 13 communities that we've helped establish over the last year and a half, 2 years. And they're going to spend that money on private land. They're going to help those people create more defensible spaces around their homes, create programs like chipping programs that help them, remove that biomass. I know there's a lot of log decks and a lot of brush out there that people just don't know what to do with, and they might be afraid to burn it. Maybe they don't want to burn it because smoke bothers them, right? So, this creates more resources for property owners. And I'm excited to see what they do in the future because, they've got a great future ahead of them, right? And they've got all the opportunities in the world with all the state investments and federal investments coming down to do more work like that to ensure that we can create safer communities that are more defensible from wildfire.
Yeah, that's music to my ears. I think we really need that. I think the community needs that. That's probably, fire and things fire related is probably the biggest concern that I hear from, neighbors, coworkers, friends who live in the community. So I guess one of the last questions I want to ask is, as far as the community, what are you proud of? What do we do well? What do you think we can double down on that we do really well, that we've always done well, that can help us really seize these opportunities and really tackle these dangers?
I mean, simply put, we're engaged. We're engaged in what's going on. We're an active community. In the June primary, it was historically low turnouts throughout the state, throughout the country. Here in Madera County, though, we had, I want to say it was 9,200 of the 25,000 votes that were cast in Madera County all came from District 5. And so, this community is engaged. And when there's an issue that is relevant to them, they come together, whether it's fire or trash or, the lake, whatever it is, they come together to tackle that issue. And so that's why it kind of breaks my heart, the way this election's gone. It's so polarized, and it's not what I wanted. I wanted to be someone that helps bring this community together, not someone that is, a catalyst or a reason why people are fighting, whether it's my opponent or myself. In January, it's going to be what it's going to be, and this community has to work together if we're going to tackle some of these issues.
So, Bobby, it's been great conversing with you and hearing you unpack some of your ideas and learning more about you. Is there any last words, and where can people learn more about your campaign and you running?
You can go to my website, you can follow me on Facebook, but really more than anything, just give me a call. I want to be available to folks in the area. I don't want to be someone that, people are afraid to approach. I consider myself to be a pretty approachable guy. But just give me a call. My number is 559-760-1243. I've had that number since I was, 15 years old.
I love that.
Texting people in Miss Brown's, political science class, right? And so I've had that number for a long time. Most people that know me have that number. But, if you have questions for me, you got concerns for me, just give me a call.
That's great. You're there for the people. You're not shying away from anybody,
Yeah.
Any conversation. That's great.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Bobby.
Hey, thank you, Mark.
It's been great.
Yeah.